Hi, I'm Yakshini Priya Sergio, and in today's video, I'll be talking you through how I painted this great grey owl in acrylic paints. Now, for the background, I'm just using a mix of Payne's Grey and a hint of lamp black with some phthalo blue. Now, for this particular painting, as you'll see as the video progresses, I have actually changed the background 3 times. My initial idea that I had, although it did look good and it came out the way I wanted, it didn't really look it came out the way I wanted, but when I put the oil owl on it, it just didn't go together. So now you can see I am painting the background of gray, a lighter gray, which is a Payne's gray mixed with some titanium white. So you will see now I'm going to be doing the background that I'm actually going to change 2 tabs after this. I'm painting in the trees and I'm going to come through with the airbrush just now and I'm going to putting in some of the rays of light coming through the trees for the moonlight. And actually, the kind of idea that I had for this painting is I wanted a night scene with the owl, with a little bit of a glowing light, the moon shining through, and also having a little bit of a glimmery light around. So I thought, okay, let me put some little circles on there, and I used stencil and airbrush to do that, to put little circles everywhere. And I wanted a bit of hint of color. I thought that would look good. So I used the airbrush to get a bit of color in. You'll see me using it just now. And that was not what I wanted. And that's the good thing about acrylics and oil paints. If you don't like something, paint over it and redo it. Do it again. Whatever you want to change it. You can do that. So they are coming through with the color. I'm using some blue, I'm using some greens, you'll see some yellows, some oranges, some reds. It looked nice. After it was finished, it looked good. It looked like what I wanted it to look like. But when I did the owl and I put the owl on and I thought of what my finished owl is going to look like, it doesn't go together. This would make the painting look very surreal, and I wanted something more realistic. So I'm going to end up painting over the entire background, but you will see that later in the video. With acrylics, I normally let between layers, I just use a hair dryer to speed up the drying time. With oil paints, you may have to wait some time for each layer to dry, or if you are using liquid, you just got to wait overnight and then you can continue the next day. So now I'm going in with the base color for the owl. I used a white chalk pencil to get the outline of the owl onto the canvas. I'm using a mix of Payne's Gray and Titanium White. I'm not so concerned with the brushstrokes showing, although I am keeping the brushstrokes in the angle or the direction of the feathers. Just using a hairdryer to get that all dried up. Now again, I've used the white chalk pencil just to get some of the detail in for the owl. And I'm just putting in the eyes and the beak and just getting some of the darker areas on to the owl. Now also, you will notice later in the video, I had to do some adjustments to the eyes and to the beak. But that's a good thing with acrylics. I can just paint over it and correct what needs to be corrected, and it's done. It dries quickly and it allows me to work and change things as I change my mind or as I see fit, or if I find something not right, I can just do the little bit of changes here and there to fix it. So I'm just going in and getting some of the shadow areas and the dark areas that are going to be on the feathers. And this video is very light. You'll see there's a bit of a glare because I've been painting either mostly in the day, sometimes in the evening as well with the artificial light, although I do have a lot of light in my studio in the day, so it causes a bit of glare. Now I'm just coming through with some Payne's Gray and Lamp Black, and I'm just getting in some of those darker patterns of the feathers, and also some of the darker areas. And I'm working section by section. Working this way makes it more easier for you to keep track of what you are doing, and it sort of helps you focus on that one area instead of focusing on the entire piece and then getting overwhelmed by it. You can see I'm just going around adding up the shadows. We are going to come through with some lighter colors and then go again through with the darker colors for the shadows, and then we're going to go through light colors for the highlights. There's still many layers to come on there. So now you can see I'm adding in the white of, or the lighter areas rather. It looks like it's a solid white or pure white that I'm using, but it's not. It's actually a mix of titanium white with Payne's gray. Then I decided it's actually better for me to darken the entire area and then do the feathers over it with the lighter colors, and then go back and refine with the darker colors. This is just some lamp black with, I think, some Payne's gray and a little bit of raw umber. I'm coming through with the light color again. This is not pure white. This is actually a mixture as well of Payne's gray and titanium white. You will see later that I will be putting another layer of a mix between Payne's gray and titanium white, and that will still look whiter than this. And also once the acrylic dries, it's going to dry a little darker than it is when I'm applying it on. You can see I'm just now refining all those feathers and getting all of them in, the directions, the patterns, covering all the areas. Now we will come through with some glazes later just to get the shadows in to make it look more three-dimensional. So I'm still adding on, I'm working section by section. Remember, the feathers in the different areas are not going to be the same. Some are long, some are short, some are wispy, some are looking very soft. See, I'm now holding the brush towards the end of the handle, and that is to create softer feathers and give it a more softer feel, to create that soft texture. You can see now I'm just darkening the next area. I'm going to start working through that with the lighter color. Don't forget to dry your painting between layers. After a certain amount of layers, you're going to need to dry it before you carry on. Otherwise, you're going to lift the previous layers of paint from the canvas. So I'm just layering in those feathers. We are still going to come back and add another layer over that, and also come in and put in some shadows and highlights. Remember, with this particular owl, they are not completely black and white. They are gray, white, and not even white, but gray, lighter shades of gray, and they've got some hints of brown in them as well. So that's why I'm using some of the mixture of the lamp black, because lamp black got a hint of a brownish sort of a look. And then also I wanted this glowingness of the around for the moonlight, for the night scene around the parrot, around the owl, and this gives it, the Payne's gray gives it that look, because Payne's gray has a hint of blue sort of in it. If you dilute it, you'll see it turns blue. So that's the kind of look I was going for. So I'm coming through now with a little bit of highlights. This is still not pure white. That mixed in with some titanium, oh, sorry, titanium white is mixed in with some Payne's gray. So now I'm just coming through with the airbrush again and getting in some of those rays. As I said, I didn't like how this came out, so I decided no, let me take it off. Not that anything was wrong with it, it looked very nice, but it did not suit the owl and go for the look I was actually going for. I thought it would be a good idea to put the colors in, but no, it needed to be more toned down, dark, blue, grays, that kind of color. So now I went ahead and I started doing something else, trying something else with the airbrush, tried to get a different out of focus background, but I ended up changing this a little. You'll see I'm using the airbrush now, not with the stencil, but I'm just trying to use the airbrush itself to get a little spots of the glimmering light all around the owl. I am going to come back, paint over it, and redo this, but it's similar to what I finally ended up with. You can see I tried to lighten it up, and I'm going to try to put some darker spots on there and patches on there, and it just didn't work out. So I decided to go ahead, paint over it. I'm still using the mix of Payne's gray with phthalo blue and a hint of lamp black. So I'm just getting in that color covering the entire background. But all these incorrect layers are not doing anything wrong. They're just adding depth to the painting. So that's fine. Okay, so now I'm back with the airbrush, and this is basically the final background that I actually went with. So I'm using a cool gray just to get the background with that little out of focus look, and I'm obviously adding a little hints of darker blue and a little bit of green. I don't want it too bright colors, green and blue. I just want a hint of color in the background to give it that glowing look. And I'm just adding some of the rays of light, or the light coming from the moon down in the night. And I'm using the airbrush again to create those little sparkles of light around the owl. I will come through and go through some of those lights running down, shining down. So here is where I am working on the eye. You don't see it much in the camera because it's filming at the angle, but the eye was not aligned with his right eye. So or his left eye rather. And I just painted over the areas that need to be changed. Even the beak was not aligned properly. So I just painted over, and now he's looking a little creepy without his eye and his beak. But I'm going to come in through, and I'm going to be obviously painting in his eye, and that'll make him look a bit normal. Okay, there he goes. That's his eyes. He's looking a little bit better. Not looking creepy anymore. And there's his beak. Okay, now remember the beak has to have, and the eyes have to have some shadows in there. It's not a stark yellow or a stark um, light color. It's just not a plain color. There's shadows in there, so there'll be some grays and toned down areas. Although owl's eyes are very bright at night. If you do get some paint in the wrong areas where you don't want the paint to be, you can just use a clean damp brush to wipe off the excess paint or that area of paint and paint over. Or you can use a paper towel that's damp and just wipe off that area, provided the area surrounding it is not wet. Otherwise, you can lift off the previous areas that you don't want to lift off the paint. So there I'm coming through again with another layer of the lighter feathers, but this is again not pure white. It is mixed titanium white mixed in with a little bit of Payne's gray to tone it down a bit. I am going to come through over this with some, to define some of the lighter areas, to do with some darker grays and some lamp black as well. And I'm also going to go through over the areas with shadow areas with the glaze. Glaze is going to be a little bit of a grayish glaze just to give it a three-dimensional look, to make it look more realistic. At the moment, it's not looking completely realistic because you can't see the shadows, and obviously there's going to be a lot of shadows around the one side of him, which is not in the area where the light is coming down. I'm just refining some of those feathers now, getting some of those details in. As you can see, the wing area, the feathers are varied there. All the areas, all the wing area, the entire wing area is not the same. They are different shapes and sizes of the feathers, and the pattern is different as well. Okay, now this looks very white, so you'll see through, I'm going through and just adding some of the darker areas and darker feathers in there just to tone down that white a bit. I am going to come through afterwards with a little bit of a glaze with Payne's gray just to get some of those shadows in. As I said, it makes it more three-dimensional. That's an example of where I came through with a paper towel just to wipe off some of the excess paint that I put too much of. Either put too much of, or sometimes if you put the incorrect color and you see it's not looking right, then just wipe it off. If it dries, just paint over it and let it dry, paint over it and fix it up. That's if it's dried already and you can't wipe it off. As you can see, if you're not happy with a certain thing and it's not looking the way you want, you can change it. Just paint over it and redo it. It's no problem. Everything you're doing is a learning or a lesson for you and you learn from it. So the next time you know something that you didn't know when you tried this painting. So you can see I'm just refining some of that feathers. And then later on, I did the bark. Bark was done with some raw umber, titanium white for the highlighted areas, mixed with some Payne's gray and even lamp black, just to get the design of the bark. But you can mix those colors and use a variety of colors, but I don't want the browns to stand out too much. Later on, when I stepped back away from the painting for a few hours and I came back and went through the background with a little bit of highlights and some foliage in the background with the light shining on it from the moon. And there, as you can see, I'm working on the bark now. The reason why I added the foliage afterwards is not in this clip, but it was added just to make it look like he's in the image like this, just with the bark that he's sitting on. He looks like he's sitting in the middle of nowhere with nothing around him. So that just brought him more into the environment. He created an environment for him. So as you can see, I keep on mixing the whites, the titanium whites, the Payne's gray, the raw umber, and the lamp black just to get those darker areas and those lighter areas and to create the texture of the bark. So every time I keep going over a layer, I keep leaving a bit of the previous layer showing through. So now I'm just coming through and refining some of those areas with the highlighted areas now and those highlights and just defining some of those feathers and just basically trying to separate them a bit so they don't look all clumped together and it gives it a bit more three-dimensional look. So now I'm coming through with the airbrush just to refine some of those sparkling lights around the owl and also just to refine the moonlight shining down. And that's it for this video. If you've enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for watching. Till next time. Bye.